Chapter 4. Brother. Sky tried to sleep, but she was restless. Having one of their little group out in the dark night was unnerving. Wade slumped in a chair, keeping watch. Twice, Sky whispered over to ask him if there was any sign of Dylan. But Wade only shook his head. It took a while, but Sky managed to doze. She woke to a black pre-dawn sky and the aroma of coffee and eggs. She peeked across the open room and saw Dylan cooking, and her tense muscles eased. Bleary from her uneasy sleep, she stood and stumbled over to the kitchen. Sky pulled out one of the nearest chairs and slumped into the seat. Dylan avoided looking at her, but said, "I cooked up some eggs. If you want some." "I do, thanks. They smell good." Sky kept her tone even, but Dylan seemed over his sour mood. Dylan made her a plate and gingerly sat it in front of her. With a smile, Sky speared a bite of the scrambled eggs and lifted it to her mouth. Dylan knew his way around the kitchen. This was the best breakfast she ever remembered eating. "Good," she said after her forkful of the fluffy eggs. He gave her a small nod. After swallowing, Sky asked him what his plans for the day were. Still circumventing her gaze, he said, "I'm gonna go holler at Joe and see how he's doing." The idea of getting out of this cabin for a while appealed to her, and perhaps getting to know each other better would ease some of the tension. "Please, take me with you." Dylan sat back and at last looked at her, raising an eyebrow. "I need out," she continued with earnest, some air. "We've all have been cooped up in here, and we're all on edge, and we need a change of scenery." Dylan grunted his agreement. He stared at his plate as he shoveled in another mouthful. "I got some places to check out, and I wouldn't mind finding game out there." "Can you be quiet in the woods?" "As in not talking so much, sure I can do that." "Does he actually think I talk that often?" "As in not talkin' at all." His expression showed it was doubtful. "Apparently, he assumes I do." Sky lowered her head so Dylan wouldn't see her frown. 2 arguments in 24 hours were enough. "I can't say a single word?" Sky flashed a wry peek back up at him. "In the woods, you only talk if you have to. No scaring off the game. Sides, there's still a few sick out there." Sky nodded. "Yes, believe it or not, I cannot talk at all." He gave a quick nod. "Okay, we leave at 6:30. "Ugh. What time is it now?" 4. With longing, Sky looked over at her bed, piled high with pillows and blankets. "I'm going to go back to bed." "Is the sun even up at 6:30? She whined. "Yeah, it is." Dylan shook his head as if in disbelief. "What kind of world did you live in before?" "A pretty cushy one," she sent back over her shoulder as she started toward the bed. Dylan snorted. "I can't even imagine your life." "You gonna come then?" "Yeah, of course, I am." Once everyone was ready, they decided Wade would take Jessie fishing at a nearby creek while Sky and Dylan went on the run for supplies and checked on neighbors. Jessie was so excited by the prospect that Sky couldn't say no, even though she would rather Jessie stay with her. So, she put her apprehension on simmer and helped Jessie get ready. Wade patiently stood and listened to Sky's almost unending list of instructions for Jessie before blowing out a huge breath. "Is that all? And here I thought you'd be worried or something." Dylan snorted, and Jessie stifled his laughter behind a fist he shoved against his lips. "Hey," Wade said, giving Sky a pat on the arm. "I get it. The boy is priority one. I'll keep him safe, and I'll even be nice to him. Well, as nice as I know how." When Sky's eyes narrowed, Wade held up his hands in surrender. There was no more Sky could ask, but she sent one warning as they parted. "I can't believe I am saying this to you and not the 10-year-old, but I better not hear you were acting up." "What you don't know?" "Wade. I'll be good, I promise. Or the boy can have it me when we get back." Sky gave Jessie a quick hug, smoothed his messy morning hair and hopped into the passenger side of Dylan's truck. As they drove down the driveway, Sky twisted to look out the back window searching for Jessie. Dylan glanced at her. You want to go with them? Goodness, no. I hate fishing. It's so boring. Sky's confession earned her a rather disappointed stare. I mean, I would fish to survive, if I need to. But not for enjoyment. I used to. Oh wait. Am I allowed to be talking now? Sky gave Dylan a mischievous smile. Dylan scoffed and uttered a quiet chuckle before drawing out his answer. Yes, you can talk now. Okay, just checking. I used to fish with my dad, to spend time with him. We would talk, or I would read to him, that was fun. But worms and waiting, no. Not really me. Dylan gave a low laugh, then sheepishly glanced at her. You ain't still mad at me? Sky puffed out a short breath and looked out the side window before replying, perhaps a little, but we all had a bad day yesterday. I wasn't proud of myself either. I don't like how I yelled at you and Wade. She saw his confused expression and continued, I get it, you don't consider it anything, but it's something to me, and I don't like that I did it. It doesn't create harmony. For the first time since meeting him, Sky heard Dylan utter a full laugh. Sky giggled, more at seeing Dylan so amused than his reaction to what she was saying. Go ahead and laugh. But there's so much conflict in the world now, and we aren't certain it will get better. She grimaced when Dylan gave her a look that said it would not. She continued, we need to make peace where we can. Home shouldn't be a place of conflict. It should be a source of comfort, especially now.
Dylan quieted. This was what he wanted, and Sky was the one that could teach him how. He wasn't happy with his behavior the other day either. Even as Dylan was yelling, he was aware he shouldn't have been. The fact was that shouting had been so much a part of his life he considered it normal conversation, and it was rare for him to recognize when he crossed over into it. But yesterday, he'd known from her reaction. Sky had been angry but also scared and hurt. And when Dylan had looked at the boy, he had been frightened too. I don't want that. I don't want to be that. Dylan agreed Sky had a point, a home should be a safe place. He and Wade had not had that growing up, but he needed to make this a good place for the boy. Dylan didn't want Jessie to think all men were like his dad. You need to just try, Dylan. Sky's words were gentle. I am trying. Sky nodded. I'm aware it's difficult but try harder. 'Cause we're all trying too. Dylan agreed and gave a small smile. Okay, I agree to try harder to try. Sky seemed happy with that and smiled back. A few miles further and Dylan surprised himself when he said, my dad. He hadn't intended to share his thoughts, they darted out before he could shove them away. Sky said nothing, just waited patient as can be, as she often did when she wanted someone to share. Dylan scowled, irritated at himself because now he needed to say something, or he would seem like an idiot. Wade said he told you about my dad. Well, I called him yesterday. Sky settled her hands on her lap and looked at Dylan with an interested expression. Oh, did you? Oh, she's good. Just calm as you please over there. Well, that's that. That's all you're gettin'. Dylan straightened his shoulders and stared out the front window. Sky waited without a word. He remained silent for a while as his mind stewed, then let out an annoyed breath. I called him. His other son answered. He wouldn't let me talk to him. Your brother? Yeah, my brother, I guess. Looking over at Dylan, Sky asked, did he say why he wouldn't let him talk to you? He said Dad was out, Dylan said and huffed a sharp breath, but I'm thinking he just didn't want me to. Why? There's been, Dylan hesitated, difficulties before. But with everything going on, would he really refuse to let you talk to your dad? I don't know. So, you're worried. Dylan stiffened. I ain't worried. Dad's tough, he can take care of himself. What's your brother's name? John. So you called, and John answered the phone. He said you couldn't talk to your father and gave a vague answer why. Yep. The more Dylan stewed about it, the angrier he got. You're worried. I said I ain't, Dylan shot back. I ain't a worrier. Women worry, men act. It may feel like just anger, but it's coming from concern you have about your father's situation. When Dylan didn't respond, Sky continued. It's a time of crisis. Anyone would feel the same way. Maybe she's right. I'm concerned. It's a normal emotion. Sky said. It's not a weakness to worry about people you care about. Dylan shot her a glance and nodded. Sometimes it's hard for us to recognize our emotions. Sky's gaze was warm and soothing. He's probably fine. Try again tomorrow. Perhaps it was the drive, or the easy way Sky had about her, but for reasons he didn't understand, Dylan told Sky about his dad. Dylan told her how he tried to get custody of him once he was aware of Dylan's existence, how even though that didn't work, his mom had let Dylan go off with his dad for a time. He also told her where his dad lived, all the things his father had taught him and what his other family was like. Dylan wasn't sure what Sky thought, but it lightened him to talk about it. He rolled his shoulders. It was. I can't even describe what it was like, getting away from this house. Like a whole different life. It made me angry, so angry I had to live here at all. Then one day, Dad said I was old enough to choose who I wanted to live with. I thought it'd be no decision at all. Dylan stared at the passing scenery. Till I realized Wade would be left behind, in that house, alone. Couldn't do it, I wouldn't leave him. Dylan rubbed his face. At least together we stood a chance. But alone. I understand. Sky reached out a hand and laid it on his forearm. Dylan startled, then allowed it, but kept his face turned so she wouldn't see his pained expression.
It was hard for Sky to imagine what it had cost for young Dylan to give up the opportunity to remain with his father, to leave the place that caused him so much torment it still haunted him. To this day, he was unable to express how wonderful it had been to be away from Virgil's house and with his own father. Dylan had relinquished a sanctuary, and instead, stayed in a dangerous place. He had done this for his brother. Sky wondered if Dylan ever regretted that decision.